Blood and Feathers, Book 1 of the Warden's Chronicle. Chapter 1. No Sightseeing. "It's a simple job," he said. "You'll be back before lunch," he said. Zai breathed in the last specks of life from the dying beast as it twitched at his feet. He wiped his daggers on its soft, downy feathers and returned them to their sheaths. Shit! He hadn't expected a giant griffin to attack him when he approached the group he was supposed to escort to Warden's Keep. The damn thing had come out of nowhere. He regretted killing it. He'd always wanted a griffin, but it had been him or it. Liar, Lucian's voice rang in his head. Maybe he would have survived the beast tearing him to bits, but he'd rather not find out. Animals had always hated him. His curse reeked of something unnatural, marking him as a threat to anything with half-decent instincts. Normally, they fled. But corner a creature guarding its young, or its charges, and it'd fight like hell. This griffin hadn't been hunting. It had been protecting them. Zai forced himself to look at the three people. A bald dwarf with a pair of goggles strapped to his forehead, a leather apron stained with unidentifiable substances, and a huge pack hanging from his back, tools, rolled paper, and Deus knows what sprouting from the top like some bizarre plant. Next to him stood what Zai guessed were two elves, a male and a female. They might be human, for all he knew, wrapped in cloaks, hiding all but their booted legs. But humans didn't ride griffins. They stood open-mouthed, staring at him in horror as his wounds, inflicted by the dead griffin, began to heal. Zai gritted his teeth as tendons slithered like worms beneath his skin, stitching muscle to bone with wet, sucking pops. He had to admit, the sound was disgusting. Zai glanced up at the mountain, home to the Celestials, then at the forest of ancient trees encircling the mountain's base, gnarled roots knuckling the earth like buried giants. "Nice forest?" the female screamed. Zai winced at the sound, raw and grief-stricken, then cursed as her eyes glowed a bright gold in the shadow of her hood. She was probably the rider of the dead griffin. Shit. Zai unconsciously reached for the short sword strapped to his back. The male grabbed at her as she charged him, but only managed to rip her cloak off. Zai's hand froze, his sword half out, as she revealed her 4 white-feathered wings. A Celestial. And royalty. Not the griffin's rider, then. That didn't stop her from trying to kill him, though. The Celestial thrust her hands at Zai as he wrapped his own cloak around himself and turned his back to her, head down. Lightning, crackling with the ozone stink of a storm, raising every hair on his body, struck him. It should have left him a smoking, blackened corpse, but the cloak, made from the hide of some demon he'd killed, took the worst of it. He couldn't remember which one. "Talia!" the male warned. "Stop!" "He killed Ithra," she snapped, gathering herself for another strike. Zai wasn't about to stand here and let this Talia use him for target practice. He whipped a vial from one pouch in his belt and threw it at her. It shattered against a barrier she threw up. Grey vapor hissed from the spilt contents. A mist, not much, but enough to obscure Thalia from his view, and him from hers. He moved, using the speed his curse gave him, snaked around the shield, grabbed the Celestial's neck from behind, and slammed her face first into the barrier. The spell, as well as Talia's nose, shattered. "Never hit a woman, son," his father used to say. "I'd whip the skin off your ass if you ever do." Funny, most days he had trouble remembering what his father looked like, what his voice sounded like. But whenever he had to hit a woman, those words came rushing back. Good thing he wasn't around to see this. His well-behaved son attacking not just any female, but a Celestial. Sorry, Dad. It was this, or let her fry him into a crisp. He did not want to be fried. He released her, letting her drop dazed to the ground, and turned just in time to take a gut punch. A gust of wind blew him back into a tree. He fell to his knees, arms wrapped around his stomach. Zai had been punched before, but none had hurt like this. A golem's punch would have had a similar effect. He managed to lift his head and saw the male standing between Talia and him, a miniature tornado whipping around him. His hood was down, his shoulder-length, iron-grey hair flapping with the wind, allowing Zai to see his pointed ears. "Touch my daughter again," he said, his voice quiet but still audible despite the wind's howl. "And I'll kill you." Zai coughed and staggered to his feet. A few decades ago, he might have felt intimidated, but he had killed things more dangerous than elves. At least, he thought they were. Elves did not go around wiping out entire villages. "As long as she isn't trying to kill me," he said, his voice surprisingly steady, "I won't be touching anybody." "What's going on, Arik?" the dwarf asked nervously, twisting a wire in his hands. "I thought he was here to help." Arik, Prince of the Elves and husband to the newly deceased Queen of the Celestials, Selene. Interesting. The dead queen was about all he'd gotten from the briefing. That, and escort the three of them back to the keep. "I am," Zai said, eyes flicking to a barely visible shimmer in the air. His hand moved before thought, the knife sang through the air, and stopped. Suspended mid-flight, hovering inches above the dwarf's head. A figure blinked into view, a black-winged celestial with the blade buried in their chest. They staggered back, collapsing in a heap. Zai exhaled sharply. Hope that one wasn't on our side. "We have to go," Arik muttered, his pale face going paler than the normal shade of elf. His companions needed no further encouragement. Prince Arik pulled his daughter to her feet and ran into the forest, the dwarf hot on their heels. Zai glanced back at the mountain. According to legend, the Celestials had raised it themselves to build their home when they first descended to the First Realm. No sightseeing, then. He sighed and followed them into the forest. Zai lost sight of the sun somewhere past the tree line, swallowed by a canopy so thick it turned midday into dusk. Didn't matter. The dark had never given him trouble. Shapes and edges stayed sharp where a normal man would have gone blind. The forest floor glowed anyway, faint threads of pale light veining the moss like something alive. Magic, probably. He caught up with them fast. The dwarf was surprisingly quick for his height, and the pack sprouting tools off his back, out ahead of the elves despite it. Roots humped out of the gloom, ready to catch an ankle. Zai watched Brogan clip one and stagger, catching himself on a trunk without slowing. "Follow me," Zai ordered, and ran past them all. "Gary!" he called. The imp appeared on his head. His balance faltered at the sudden weight, and he quickly righted himself. "Nice of you to drop in," he snapped. "Is Bird gone?" asked the imp, hugging Zai's head with his arms and legs, the one eye in the middle of his head darting around, wide with fear. Zai brushed away the imp's tail. The end, a blade shaped like half of an arrowhead, from his neck. The last thing he needed was a slashed throat. "Yes, I killed it," he said. Then the imp looked behind him, yelped, and lunged for a low-hanging branch as Zai ran past it. Gary feared anything with wings larger than him. "She's on our side!" Zai yelled at the imp, who was jumping from tree to tree, keeping pace with the group. "What about him?" Zai stopped, and the others did too. All except Brogan, who ploughed on a few paces before he caught himself. "Why are we stopping?" he nearly screeched, jogging back toward them. Behind them, a winged figure was half running, half flying toward the group. "I can't let them know where the portal is," Zai muttered, eyes fixed on the approaching celestial. "Portal?" The dwarf's voice rose a pitch higher as he rummaged through his apron. More figures were dropping from the canopy of trees in front of them and behind them. They spread out, trying to pen them in. Celestials, 8 of them, and nothing like Talia. Where she had 4 white wings, they had only 2 apiece, larger and black. Zai wondered how they got the strength to carry such mass, let alone fly, but then again, Celestials were not humans. They wore sleek, black armor, light enough for speed, but probably hardened enough to deflect a blade. A normal one, at least. A few carried blades, but Zai was more concerned about the unarmed ones. 3 of them, inky darkness rising from their heads and shoulders like they were on fire. Magic users. Fighting a magic user exposed you to a million creative ways to get killed. All Celestials could use magic, so Zai wasn't ruling out the other 5. The tainted ones, Talia breathed nervously, licking the blood that trailed from her no longer broken nose to her lips. Zai frowned. That was some fast healing, almost as fast as his own. It might be a problem, seeing as they were facing 8 of her kind, probably with the same healing abilities. Tainted. Raven's work, if the stories were true. Zai had fought tainted before, just never a tainted Celestial. 8 of them was about to change that. The dwarf finally pulled out a metal ball the size of an apple with a string hanging from it. The elf and his daughter scrambled away from him like he'd just pulled out a contagious disease. "Brogan, put that thing away!" Arik hissed. "We might need it." "I'd like to get out of this with all my limbs intact," Arik said, trying to get away from the dwarf and keep his distance from the terrifying Celestials, which was difficult as they started to close in on them. If he could get these 3, who probably had never seen a proper fight, let alone been in one, to Warden's Keep with just a limb missing, he would be very grateful to Deus. He wanted to tell the dwarf to do whatever he wanted with the thing, but Brogan had that mad gleam in his eyes. Dwarves get right when they were about to test an invention that probably wasn't safe. "Don't worry, it's only a small amount. The explosion won't be as large as the one at the forge," Brogan assured them. Zai didn't like the sound of that. He had survived many wounds that would kill a normal person. A sword to the heart, an arrow in his head, and, just a few moments ago, his insides ripped out by sharp talons. But he had never experienced being blown to pieces before, and he wasn't about to find out if he could recover from it. "Come quietly, half-breed," the evilest looking of the lot spoke, "and I'll make it quick." He obviously was speaking to Thalia. "Which one of those bitches sent you?" Arik asked in his flat voice. Their leader continued like he hadn't spoken. "We might even let the others go. 1 life for 3. That didn't sound so bad." "Might," Lucian warned. Zai ignored him, but knew he was right. Even if this horror of a Celestial had said he would let them go, he couldn't just let them take Thalia. Not that she was showing any sign of sacrificing herself for the others. "I'll say this once." Zai spoke as he drew his short sword and a dagger. "Leave or die." "Little worm," the leader sneered, spreading his black wings. "We are worshipped as gods. Do you think?" Above him, a branch dipped. Gary dropped onto the Celestial's shoulders, tail flashing. A wet crunch. The Celestial's head lolled sideways, hanging by a strip of flesh before tearing free. It hit the ground with a thud, dead eyes staring up as the body crumpled, black wings flapping uselessly. Everyone stared. "I kill bird!" Gary shrieked, dancing on the corpse. Then everything went to shit. Black fire streaked past Zai's shoulder, close enough to singe hair, and exploded against the trunk behind him. Balls of it flew alongside golden lightning and gusts of wind, flung without any aiming done. Somewhere to his left, a tainted magic user dropped with a hole in his chest, courtesy of Thalia's lightning. Ahead of him, Arik's winds caught a bolt of black fire and threw it wide, splintering bark into shrapnel where Brogan had been standing a moment before. Zai lost sight of the dwarf in the spray of wood. Then Brogan's metal ball arced back into view through the chaos, fuse hissing like a dying snake. A warrior caught it, dumbstruck, and lobbed it back. Zai snatched it from the air, the string sputtering in his grip. There was a loud boom that deafened him, then a bitter, metallic taste in his mouth. His arm was gone, Flesh peeled back from his skull on one side of his face, giving him a grotesque half-grin. The stench hit first. Vinegar and rotting eggs. As the acids and poisons from the shattered vials in the belt pouches across his chest gnawed at his skin, bubbling flesh into grotesque blisters. Maybe it was the explosion or his nightmarish appearance, but the tainted hesitated. Then the pain caught up with him, arriving in waves, each crest a white-hot brand searing along his nerves, until even his teeth ached with it. Zai threw his ruined head back and screamed. And the thing inside screamed with him.